Hey, what's up, street gods? It's Eric from the Eric Street Photography Blog. So, a word of encouragement. Realize that you are already a photographer. A lot of us as photographers, we start off photography with our iPhones, with a point and shoot camera, and we just start off as a passion. We're photographing our foods, our travels, our lives, etc. And the more experience we get in photography, then we feel like, oh, if I want to be a quote quote photographer, I need a big fancy camera, I need a bunch of followers. Do I have to make money from it? And this is the sad thing about modern society is that unless you make a living from it, unless you're super famous for it, or there's some sort of like social prestige, people aren't going to accept you as a photographer. So for example, let's say you go to a dinner party and people say, oh, what do you do, or what are you? And let's say, your day job's like a consultant, but you say, I'm a photographer. They're like, oh, cool, do you make money from that? Or is it your living? Or and the sad thing is, the reason people ask that is that they think that by making money from it or making a living from it validates the fact that you're doing it. Whereas I have a friend, his name is Jeroen Helmink. It's great. He's whenever he introduces himself to people, he says, hello, my name is Jeroen. I'm a photographer and I have the side business as mergers and acquisitions. So obviously his day job isn't what defines him. And so I think the same thing is you as a photographer. It doesn't really matter what your job is. You should define yourself as a photographer if you want to, of course. Because a lot of people, the reason why there's so much elitism and snobbery behind some people, I always say, oh, everyone thinks they're a photographer. I can't believe these noobs with iPhones just think they're photographers. Is that a lot of people have spent like $200,000 in debt going to school for photography or art school, or have been working as a pro. Like, I'm a working photographer because I had to go through like 10 years of struggle and blah blah. But the truth is, everyone's a photographer now, and I don't think everyone's a good photographer. I mean, there's a lot of photographers which are nice people and they make not great photos, but doesn't mean they're bad people. But I would still call themselves photographers. So I would say maybe we should change the conversation, not if you're a photographer or not. Maybe it's like whether you like your own photos or not, whether you have the self-confidence to call yourself a photographer. How would you define yourself? You don't even have to call yourself a photographer. You call yourself a visual artist, or you don't even have to define yourself. Just call yourself you. So even nowadays, I don't really define myself as a photographer. I don't like to define myself as anything. I just, hey, I'm Eric. And if people were to ask me, if I could really, really define myself, what would I call myself? I'd probably call myself philosopher artist, because I'm passionate about photography, learn more about wisdom and truth. And artist because, I like to make photos. I like to, paint, draw. I like to use my iPad. I like to make these kind of videos. I like to do really bad freestyle rapping and make beats. So once again, there's so many different ways you could approach photography. You could be an educator. You could be a working photographer. You could shoot commercials. You could be a baby photographer. You could be a product photographer. Never let anyone else talk down on you by saying you're not a photographer. And who knows, maybe the best strategy is say, oh, I'm not a photographer. Like the famous Gary Winogrand photographer once said, it's like, I'm not a street photographer, I'm a zoo photographer. And a lot of other photographers, like even Henri Cartier-Bresson, probably wouldn't first call himself a photographer. He'd probably call himself a surrealist or an artist. So once again, have confidence in yourself. If you want to, call yourself a photographer. Own it. You got this. Peace out.